Now, suppose that it could somehow be proven that ES is an inconsistent idea. We still know that the arguments against omniscience are unsound, for we could say that God's knowledge is tiered like our own. Or we could speak of God's omniscience, or we could speak of omniscience as God's first order knowledge only, and all that is implied by it. So all divine nth order logic is reducible to God's real or first order knowledge, and this model of divine knowledge avoids the arguments against omniscience. So they are, again, to repeat, not sound arguments. By the way, the temptation is to think of God's real knowledge as infinite, but it is not, at least if we ignore the knowledge God has of himself, for there aren't an infinite number of true propositions. Think about it. There is only a finite quantity of historical facts, first order historical facts. There's only a handful of scientific laws. There's only a finite quantity of historical events, only a handful of scientific laws. All of Euclidean geometry is reducible to 5 axioms, if I remember correctly. So first order mathematics is, by extension, finite in size. Apart from divine self-knowledge, what else is there to know? So a finite number of first-order historical facts plus a finite number of first-order scientific facts plus a finite number of first-order mathematical facts equals a finite number of total facts. If you throw in a finite number of first-order philosophical facts, you still have only a finite number of total facts. When reflecting on the arguments against omniscience, I found myself thinking of the set of all facts as infinite. In other words, the set would have to be infinite in order for it to be logically impossible. But then upon further reflection, I decided that the second argument would still go through even if the set of all facts only contain 2 propositions. That is, if knowledge isn't thought of as being tiered. To make a long story short, these 2 arguments against omniscience are not sound, and so we have no reason that I'm aware of to suppose that omniscience is self-contradictory. It may be pairwise contradictory with, say, omnipotence, but that is another question for another time. As I said at the beginning, it is good that skeptics raise these arguments even if, in the end, they turn out to be unsound. The reason why it is good, as I've already said, is that it gives us, as theist intellectuals, an excuse to refine our understanding of God and to get to know him more intimately. But as I also said, this argument against the existence of God as omniscient is basically new to me. So that's my disclaimer. If I have made any major blunders in this presentation, you will, I trust, be quick to forgive and allow me a second chance to reformulate a response to it. So this series is not necessarily the final word on the question, in other words. This series of 3 videos, Omniscience and Rationality. I simply cannot end without making explicit an observation. Even if someone someday does come up with a sound argument against the existence of an omniscient deity, that would not mean that God does not exist. All that argument would show, all by itself, is that if God exists, he is not omniscient, as was previously thought. Such an argument would not be a full-blown proof of atheism, of full-blown atheism. It would be a step in the right direction, though, or if you're a theist like me, a step in the wrong direction. But I'm afraid that nobody has given such a proof against omniscience, a sound one I mean, at least so far as I'm aware. More generally, to my knowledge, nobody has given a sound single attribute or pairwise attribute inconsistency argument against the existence of God to date, up to the present time. If these arguments are out there and sound, but I just don't know about them, please let me know. Also, if you are an atheist, I suspect you'll continue trying to construct sound attribution arguments, but in the end, perhaps they will turn out to be unsound upon further inspection. In the meantime, I would say that there are many good reasons to believe there is a God, and so far, in spite of people looking very diligently for them, no good ones to disbelieve in him. So those of us who do believe in God, it seems to me, have the rational high ground in comparison with the position of atheism. Shalom out.